How beautiful it is here!" Laura exclaimed, admiring the view of the mountains through the car window. "The mountains are breathtakingly beautiful." Like the first time the car smoothly rounded the steep curves of the mountain serpentine. Matteo smiled at his wife's words, sharing her delight. They had been married for 5 years, and every New Year's Eve they came to the mountains for a week to breathe the clean air and ski. The ski slope was 15 kilometers away from the cabin where they always stayed. The tedious barking of a dog brought Matteo back to reality. He looked disapprovingly at the pug in Laura's hands. "Put that misunderstanding to rest. Why did you have to take her with you? You can't leave her home alone." Laura objected, trying to calm the little dog. "Georgette, hush." Georgette looked at her mistress and began to yelp even louder, as if testing her master's nerves. "Quiet." Matteo could not stand it, shouting loudly at the dog. There was silence in the car. Georgette whimpered and clung to her owner, turning away from Matteo. "There, now she's offended." Laura stroked the dog. Georgie, you have to be quiet in the car. You're a well-mannered dog. Can you call this creature a dog?" Matteo even wrinkled his nose in distaste. "A sheepdog or a husky, yes." "Matteo, don't start this conversation again. It's a gift from your parents, you can't refuse it." Laura put the doggy in the back seat. "The relatives got it right," Matteo muttered, pulling off the road and into the woods. Almost there," Laura remarked. "Georgie, you're going to love it here." The dog began to howl in response. Matteo squeezed his eyes shut at Georgette's unpleasant shrill voice and stepped sharply on the brake. "Laura." The guy looked eloquently at his wife, then at the pug. "Georgie, be quiet." The girl ordered, but the dog only increased his howling. "You will return this nightmare to your mother, and that is out of the question." Matteo pressed the gas pedal, opening the window. Cold air rushed into the interior of the car, quieting Georgette. The little dog looked unhappily at the open window and moved farther away. The car slowly made its way down the forest road. It was getting dark. Soon they saw a log cabin nestled among the cedars and pines. Matteo stopped the car near the cabin and turned off the engine. Georgette began scratching at the car door. There was a loud bark and a demand to let her out. "Get out!" Matteo opened the door, letting the doggy out of the car. Laura, watch her. He's a useless creature. It'll get lost in the woods." Laura smiled. That's what Matteo was all about. Barely tolerating Georgette, but worried that the animal might get lost. Fastening the leash to Georgette's collar, Laura climbed the steps to the veranda. Breathing in a full breath of clean mountain air, she smiled happily. They finally made it. Opening the cabin door, Laura turned on the light. Placing Georgette on the couch, she ordered her to sit still. The dog barked briefly, wagging his tail vigorously. Unloading the car, Matteo flooded the fireplace in the house. Outside they lit a brazier and cooked kebabs. The first batch of kebabs the guy took into the house, and the second left on the veranda, deciding to pick up later. The young people ate dinner, and Laura picked up the guitar, fulfilling Matteo's request to play for him. Only Laura's fingers touched the strings of the guitar as Georgette began to howl in her voice. Matteo covered his ears with his palms and, shaking his head unhappily, jumped outside. "This is unbearable," Matteo grumbled, sitting down on the bench. The snow was falling quietly outside, and it was warm. "It's a beautiful New Year's Eve night," Laura exclaimed as she stepped out onto the veranda. She threw her jacket over her husband's shoulders and looked at him guiltily. "I'm sorry about Georgette." Since your mother gave that nightmare, there is no peace and quiet in our house. Is this the kind of dog you wanted? It can't accompany you on hikes, Mateo remarked. You wanted a husky, not this misunderstanding. Mom meant well, Laura replied in a quiet voice. Laura and her friends went camping, and Mateo couldn't always accompany her. But a dog like Georgette was clearly not the right dog. Why his wife's mother had given her as a gift remained unclear to Mateo. At that moment there was the sound of breaking glass, followed by the rattle of a falling chair. Laura jumped up on the spot and, running into the cabin, found Georgette among the shards of dishes. Everything that had been on the table, along with the tablecloth, was on the floor shattered to pieces. The doggy, amusedly slurping, was finishing the rest of the kebab. Oh, Georgie, exclaimed Laura, taking the dog in her arms. Is this how you want to make Mateo feel comfortable? After tidying up, Laura let Georgette out for a walk. Laura, did you bring in the kebab from the veranda? Mateo asked his wife, looking at the empty plate. I left the meat here. No, are you sure? Laura looked at Georgette doubtfully. Georgie was in the house the whole time. She couldn't have eaten the kebab. There were a couple kilos in there, she wouldn't be able to handle it. Mateo threw a glance at the forest surrounding them. The rest of the New Year's Eve night passed without manifestation. In the morning, the young men went skiing, leaving a screaming Georgette at the lodge. Mateo breathed a sigh of relief, looking forward to a few hours without the dog. Having had a wonderful day, the couple returned already in the dark. Mateo, there's someone out there. Laura exclaimed, pointing with her hand around the corner of the house. I saw a shadow flicker. Laura, it's dark outside, you could be imagining things. Mateo got out of the car and, shining his flashlight, headed towards the spot Laura had indicated. Georgette was gone. His wife followed at his heels. The paw prints of the animal were clearly visible in the snow, going deep into the forest. Is it a wolf? Laura asked in a whisper, snuggling into her husband's arm. I don't think so. Mateo frowned. No wolves have ever been seen in these parts. Laura looked around apprehensively. Raising her gaze, she began to peer into the darkness of the forest. Suddenly 2 eyes looked at her. One red, the other yellow. Laura blinked and the vision evaporated. Mateo, I just saw 2 different colored eyes. Laura exclaimed. It's Bigfoot. Laura, there you go again with your childish stories about something that doesn't exist. Mateo smiled, stroking his wife's cheek. It's just some beast of the forest. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Laura objected. And yetis do exist. Let's go inside. Your baby wants to go for a walk. Mateo pulled his wife toward the house. Mateo. Laura asked in a whisper. Tell me that Bigfoot ate our kebab last night. Quite possibly, muttered Laura, casting one last glance at the dark trees. All night Laura tossed restlessly and rose from her bed at first light of the winter sun. Trying not to wake her husband, she went to the kitchen and, making tea, went out onto the veranda. Georgette followed after her, barking loudly and barking all around her. Laura cringed at the loud noises the dog made and quietly closed the front door behind her. Taking a couple steps, she froze in place, finding the carcass of a hare on the veranda floor. Did Georgette try? Mateo asked in a sleepy voice behind Laura's back. Laura looked doubtfully at the doggy, then at the hare carcass. The feeling that someone was watching them never left her. For the next 2 days the story repeated itself. In the morning there was a hare carcass lying on the veranda. But who had brought it there was a mystery. Laura had left some goodies for Bigfoot. An apple and a chocolate bar, untouched. But the sausage was not refused by the mystery guest. Georgette was particularly loud that day. Matteo couldn't stand it any longer, so he kicked her out the door. Half an hour later he heard the frightened shriek of a little dog, which seemed to make the glass in the house rattle. Leaping out on the veranda, the lad saw Georgette huddled in a corner, with fright in her eyes. "Who are you frightened of, you poor creature?" Matteo looked around, but found nothing suspicious. This mysterious visitor was beginning to worry him. Who could it be? Or what? Georgette had been unusually quiet since yesterday. I'd rather be silent than vocal. Frightened? Laura asked thoughtfully, looking at the window and shuddering. Matteo. Matteo, there's someone out there. Matteo, too, heard the sounds of hurried footsteps on the veranda. Putting his skis aside, he rushed to the door, swinging it open nastage. He caught a glimpse of something white, looking like the back of an animal. Grabbing his jacket, he ran out of the house, seeing a trail of footprints heading into the woods. "You're not going," Laura declared, realizing her husband's intention. "Your Yeti won't do anything to me." Matteo smiled at his wife's concerned look. "There's a forester who lives farther from our house. You can ask him, from him." The next morning Matteo went to visit the forester, while Laura stayed at home with Georgette. Warmly dressed, the girl picked up the little dog in her arms and hurried for a walk in the woods near the house. There was not much snow this year, so the snowdrifts did not scare Laura. Georgette tried to keep up with her mistress on her short legs, snorting amusingly when the snow got on her face. Taking pity on the little dog, Laura bent down to take her in her arms. At that moment, someone sat up and pushed her in the back. From surprise, Laura did not stand on her feet and fell face down into the snow, hearing an incomprehensible noise behind her. When she got to her feet, she shook off the snow, wiping her eyes. Georgette whimpered nearby, gradually raising her voice to a squeal. The doggie reached her mistress and clung to her legs. "Well, what are you scared of?" Laura stroked Georgette's head. "You're a brave dog." Georgette barked even louder, trying to jump into her owner's arms. "No. You will go on your own, with your own paws," the girl declared in a stern voice. "I can't carry you in my arms all the time." Laura turned around and froze in place. Right behind her back lay a huge branch of an old pine tree that had just broken off from the tree. Laura looked at the thick pine trunk with its hooked branches and shuddered. Someone had pushed her in the back, thus saving her life. But who was it? Looking around, Laura saw nothing suspicious. "Strange," stretched out the girl. "Quiet, Georgie." The little dog howled in a voice demanding to be taken into her arms. Ignoring Georgette's barking, Laura approached the fallen branch. It looked as if the weight of the snow had broken the branch. Laura mumbled thoughtfully as she examined the scene. Suddenly the branch moved, making Laura wince. She heard a sound like a groan. Laura listened closer. The moan was repeated again. Kneeling down, the girl began to shovel the snow with her hands, breaking off small twigs. Laura heard a whimpering sound. And the head of a dog with multicolored eyes appeared. The animal was trying to get out of the snow, but was crushed by a thick branch. In indecision, Laura reached out her hand, brushing the snow off the animal's head. The dog did not object to the girl's touch, looking at her pitifully with its peculiar eyes. "You've saved my life," exclaimed Laura, trying to move the branch and free the dog. "I can't, it's too heavy. I'm going to get help, just hold on, please." Laura ran towards the cabin, praying that Mateo had already returned from the forester. From a distance she spotted the car and started calling loudly for Mateo. The boy ran out onto the veranda to his wife's cries. "Mateo, I need help. Please, hurry." Laura waved her arms, pointing deep into the woods. Mateo threw on his jacket and ran after his wife. When he heard Georgette howling, he thought the dog was in trouble. "Help me move the branch and free him." Laura knelt down. Mateo froze on the spot when he saw the dog with multicolored eyes being crushed by a huge branch. Shaking his head, he tried to move the thick pine bough, but it wouldn't budge. "Laura, I'll try to lift it, and you try to pull the dog out." Laura nodded. Mateo exerted all his strength and managed to lift the branch a few centimeters, which allowed the dog to get out of captivity. With Laura's help, the dog got out and shook off the snow. Breathing heavily, Mateo was surprised to see that the dog was the snow-white husky his wife had dreamed of. "Are you all right, doggy?" Laura groped the animal's legs, carefully checking for fractures. "My savior." "Laura, I wouldn't." Mateo began and stopped talking when the dog licked Laura's cheek. "My savior." Laura repeated, hugging the dog around the neck. Mateo took a step to the side. The wife's dog growled warningly. "We are our own." Laura noticed the tattered collar around the husky's neck. "Why do you have such a connection with a strange dog?" Mateo wondered. "He chose me," Laura answered simply. "He's been following us all this time. See that branch? It was supposed to fall on my head. And Yeti pushed me in the back and saved my life. I'm not leaving him here." "Bigfoot?" Mateo smiled as the dog perked up his ears. "Then I should thank Yeti for saving my Laura's life." They took Yeti to the village, where they showed him to the veterinarian. The dog obeyed Laura as if he had always been her pet. Too thin, but in general the condition of the dog is satisfactory. The vet's verdict. About 3 years old. "I don't understand how he could survive in the woods without help." "How could he? Is that possible?" Laura asked the vet. "A husky can if it's trained to hunt," the vet confirmed, smiling. "This dog is lucky to have met you. I'm lucky he was around otherwise." Mateo didn't finish, afraid to imagine how today might have ended. "The forester said that Bigfoot showed up here in the summer. He got lost. He fed him, but the dog wouldn't let him near him. It's amazing that he trusts you so much." "My savior." Laura stroked Yeti's head. Yeti barked, wagging his tail. He had chosen his mistress, feeling her to be his human. He had a home now, but the little dog was a nuisance. Yeti wanted to get to know her better, but every time he approached her, she gave a loud howl and ran to hide. "Honey, but what about my present?" Mateo asked when they got home to town. "I didn't think Bigfoot would beat me to it." Laura looked at her husband questioningly, not sure what he was talking about. Mateo came back into the room holding a basket, where a snow-white puppy, tied with a blue ribbon, sat on a cushion of blue. "Oh," Laura exhaled, taking the puppy in her arms. "Lucky's puppy, thank you. His name is Lucky." Mateo smiled at his wife's delight. Georgette was taken by her mom. And Yeti was a little bored. Now he would have a new friend. Laura let Yeti sniff the baby. "I'm not bored at all without her," Mateo exclaimed, happy that no one else in the house was howling. "Well, Yeti, how do you like your new friend?" The puppy growled, amused at Yeti's overactive interest in him. "Woof," replied Yeti, wagging his tail. Mateo stroked the dog's head. Yet he began to trust him, allowing himself to be stroked. With such a guard, he could rest assured of his wife's safety on her hikes. He would always be grateful to him for saving Laura's life. Still, it's nice when no one howls in the house. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next videos. Subscribe to our channel. All the best to you.